Hey knitters, and welcome to episode 25 of the WoolJewel podcast. I'm Caitlin, coming to you from Rhineland-Pfalz, Germany, where I currently live with my husband and my cat. And this is my knitting podcast. It has been about a month since my last episode. And that is simply just because I've been so busy, particularly because I have a show coming up. For those of you who don't know or are new, I am an amateur ballet dancer, so we are doing Cinderella this upcoming week, and so I've just kind of been in rehearsals or classes like every single day, and any moment of spare time I've had, I just really needed to rest or spend time with my husband. So anyway, I have a ton to share because I haven't been able to film for a whole month, and that is including what must be a record-breaking 4 finished objects for today, all of which are garments. So you have that to look forward to today. And then I also want to share a little bit about my trip to Paris, which I took. So I'll put some footage and info about that at the end of the episode. I'm gonna try to breeze through all this admin stuff so we can get into the fun stuff, which is all the knitting I've been doing this past month. So first I want to give a huge welcome to all the new subscribers I have. I seem to have had quite a jump in my number of subscribers this past month. So thank you so much for subscribing, anybody new, and for checking me out. And also always a huge thank you to anybody who's been subscribed and keeps coming back. I really appreciate all of the input from you guys and all the interaction I'm getting. It's been so much fun. I think a huge number of these new subscribers have come from the Squirrel Pie Productions podcast. Tommi was so sweet and mentioned me on her show, and I think that a lot of you guys have discovered me from her. If not, it doesn't matter. I'm glad you're here. So anyway, thank you, Tommi, and I love your podcast too. So if you guys haven't checked out Tommi's podcast, he's definitely one of my absolute favorite podcasters out there. I also want to say thank you to everybody who participated in the Podiversary thread giveaway. Last episode I uploaded, it was around my first year of podcasting, so I just asked for some feedback, what people like about the podcast, and maybe something else they'd like to see from me, because I'd like to do a little bit more this year, but I just couldn't really decide what direction to take it in, and I can't take it in all the directions, so it's really good to know. A lot of people seem to want sweater knitting info, so like just tips and tricks about sweater knitting that I use, and maybe some sort of like advice column type thing. So I am going to take that into account. That seems to be the most requested type of video. So I'm gonna see what I can do with that information. But thank you so much to everybody for all your suggestions. It was so sweet reading all your kind words. And I did not ask those questions specifically to get an ego boost, but like, you guys were so nice, and I just like couldn't believe all the sweet things that you guys were saying. So right now I'm going to draw a winner from that thread using a random number generator. I forgot to do it before I started filming, so I'm gonna do that right now. Okay, so at the time of filming, there are 31 posts in there. The first one is mine, so I am going to generate a number between 2 and 31 using Google. And that is number 9. So who is that? Post number 9 is Left Coast Becca. Oh my gosh, congratulations, Becca. Send me a message on Ravelry so that I can gift you a pattern of your choice on Ravelry. Becca left an extremely helpful and very sweet message on that thread, so thank you so much. I am really, really appreciative of anybody who entered that giveaway. Like I said, really helpful information and very, very sweet. That's about it. I have one thing left to talk about before I get into the knitting stuff. I had mentioned last time, I think, that I was considering putting ads on my videos, and that was mostly because I'm trying to come up with a way to be able to cover some of the costs of like shipping for giveaways and all that stuff, because I want to be able to have giveaways and things for you guys, but I'm not able to contribute financially that much to my own podcast on top of the time that it takes. So I was considering ads, and now I've decided against them because what I'd rather do is have a Patreon, and this is not me asking for donations, but it's just an option there for people who want to contribute. So I felt like ads were not as much up to you guys, and everybody has to watch them no matter what, but not everybody has to go to the Patreon. So I'm just gonna have that Patreon set up there if you feel like you want to contribute a little bit. Totally optional for you guys, but extremely appreciated by me no matter what amount. And some of the benefits of having the Patreon will hopefully mean a more consistent upload schedule for me, which I know has been like crazy. Sometimes it's a really long time between episodes. But if I am able to meet a certain goal, I'll be able to set aside time for the podcast more regularly. And it also means I'll be able to do more giveaways, which are way more fun for you guys. So I just decided to set it up and see how it went. And I will not be shoving it in your face every week, but this is the first time I'm mentioning it, so I just wanted to put it out there that I've got one. I will put a link in the description below. Let's get on to the knitting. Okay, finished objects are first, and like I said, I've got a whopping 4 finished objects, which are all garments today. So I'm gonna start with what I'm wearing, and this is the Fleet Cardigan by Jennifer Dassau, I don't know. It's in the fall 2017 KnitScene magazine. So I'll show it to you, I'm wearing it. So it's pretty much an overall seed stitch cardigan with ribbing for the shawl collar and the sleeve cuffs. I knit this with Woolfolk FAR, which is an ultrafine merino. And while it is super, super cozy and comfortable, I am a little concerned with the pilling that is happening. So it is pilling quite a bit. This yarn does have a bit of fuzz after you've worn it. So while I do love this yarn for how soft and amazing and lightweight it is, it does get really fuzzy, and I don't mind a halo on yarn, but it is irritating to have to deal with pills all the time. Especially because in seed stitch, it's not as easy to get rid of the pills, I think. Because if you have one of those sweater shavers, like a gleaner or something, you're supposed to like stroke it with the grain, or like with the fibers laying a certain way, but in seed stitch, the fibers go this way and they go this way. So there's not like a perfect way to shave seed stitch, especially since it's so bumpy too. But in stockinette, it's like really smooth and all the fibers are kind of laying in the same direction. So it's easier to shave off the pills. So just thinking about the cost of this much Woolfolk FAR, because that is not a cheap yarn, and it comes in 50-gram hanks. So this was quite the expensive project. I just had that yarn sitting around for a super long time, not knowing what to do with it, and I just decided to make this cardigan. So since it is getting like really fuzzy and pilly, it just seems kind of silly to have this like super expensive cardigan that isn't also fancy. Like, it's not something I'm gonna put on with a nice dress and go out. It's like hang out at home in my sweatpants type of cardigan, because it's just like really cozy and soft and doesn't look the nicest because it has all these pills. So I'm not sure that I would use this yarn again for a garment. Maybe for a really nice shawl or something. As much as I love it, I'm also somewhat frustrated at that. And I wasn't planning to make this cardigan super fancy or anything just because of the cost. I just really wanted to use the yarn because it had been in my stash for a long time, and I just happened to have the right amount for this cardigan. I actually had a little bit extra, so I knit the collar a little further. I'll take it off so you can see. The collar didn't quite come up as far as I wanted it to go. So I just kind of improvised some short rows around the neck to make it longer here. And then also the pattern had you pick up stitches for the shawl collar starting at the seed stitch corner, but I just decided to go all the way down and also pick up stitches on the bottom ribbing so that I wouldn't have, because it would have like a cutout corner right here, which I think looks cute, but I just didn't want it. So minor adjustments, but I do love wearing it, and it's super, super warm and lightweight and soft, and I love the color. Yeah, I don't think there's really much else to say about it. So I will move on to the next thing. So this is particularly exciting because I started this sweater quite a long time ago. That's not true, maybe a couple months. I don't remember when I started this. Anyway, I started the Ouse Bridge, I still don't know how to say it, by Francesca Hughes. It is a cropped, cabled 1x1 rib sweater. And I just want to show you guys the detail of the underarm. So it has these double cables that meet at the seam from the waist and go all the way up and through the arm. And I just think it's so pretty. This sweater had quite a few issues. If you've been watching, there were a lot of things in the pattern that were either mistakes or didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, and so it was not the smoothest knitting experience. The actual stitches and the physical knitting itself was not hard. It's just ribbing and simple cables. And it's knit in pieces, so it seamed. And none of that is complicated, but just kind of the way the pattern was laid out was not the most intuitive for me, and there were a couple mistakes. They weren't huge mistakes, but it was enough for me to like be second guessing myself. Luckily, the Fibre company and Francesca Hughes were both really, really helpful and responsive to messages. So you guys, if you ever have problems with a pattern, don't feel shy or afraid to like just email the designer or whoever published the pattern, because in my experience, they're always really helpful. So if you're second guessing yourself or like feeling like it's way more confusing than it should be, just send an email. Because if you're confused, there's a good chance that other knitters are confused too, and they probably want to know about it. So anyway, thank you Fibre company, and thank you Francesca Hughes for being so helpful. So I got the issues kind of figured out. One of which was this ribbing goes all the way down the front. And you'll see here at the edge that the ribbing is syncopated, meaning the knits turn into pearls and the pearls turn into knits. So it's not a consistent rib all the way down. It kind of changed right here near the edge. And I was not sure if that was correct or not. The sample on the actual pattern had this not there. Like it was a consistent rib all the way down. So that's when I started to think maybe this is a mistake. But then I get on her Instagram and I found another picture of her wearing a different one. It was like in a different color, and I guess it was like another sample or a test net or something. And that one did have this, and it was really obvious, and I thought, well, she's the designer and she's wearing it, so maybe that's how it's supposed to be. Maybe it's like a design feature. Turns out it was not a design feature, it was just a mistake in the pattern after I emailed the Fibre company. But I think it looks okay because it kind of just looks like an edging, just like a different edging. So I just purposely, I knit the front that way, and so I just did the same thing on the back to keep it the same. And then I also added that same syncopated rib on the cuff of the sleeves. And apparently they have fixed it in the actual pattern and done a pattern update. It was really, really difficult to get gauge for this pattern because it is a DK yarn and it is baby camel, cashmere, and silk, I think. And usually that kind of blend would be used for a more drapey fabric, but for this pattern, it's used with really, really small needles. I think I used a 2.5 millimeter or something like that. So really small needles. And I still couldn't get gauge. And according to my math that I did, which could have been completely wrong, it was knitting a slightly less dense fabric. So I had to change where I was doing my increases for the shaping to be able to get the same measurements. And to me, it would make sense that a less dense fabric would be using less yarn. So I thought I was safe on the yarn, but I actually ended up using 2 full extra skeins of this yarn than the pattern called for. So I don't know if that is an actual mistake, having the yarn amounts, but I cannot understand how a way more dense fabric knit with the same measurements would use less yarn. That just doesn't make sense to me. So I don't know about that, but I also can't say for sure because I did the sleeves totally different. Since my gauge was so off, I didn't want to risk knitting a whole sleeve, blocking it, and then seaming it and not have the armholes fit together perfectly. Because I feel like with a set-in sleeve, it really needs to be the right measurement to fit like a puzzle piece into that seam. So I Googled how to do a seamless top-down set-in sleeve, and I found an awesome tutorial by Gum By Golly. I think I linked it or I mentioned it in the last episode, but it was super, super helpful. And if you ever want to try a seamless set-in sleeve, I really recommend it. There were pictures, there's like really clear instructions. She lays out any of the math that you're gonna have to do. And I think it turned out really, really well. I don't know, I just really, really love this sweater. Okay, alpaca is super, super warm. Not alpaca, camel. I mean, they're in the same family, but it's a super warm sweater. It's really dense, it's really stretchy, and I've never really made anything with negative ease before, so that was kind of fun. I finished this right before I went to Paris, so I was able to wear it around Paris, and so I don't know, felt special. I really like it. I haven't blocked it. I don't feel like I really need to though. I think it looks pretty good. So I will update you guys if after I block it, if it looks totally different. And I forgot to mention that I knit that partially inspired by a knit along that Celeste is doing. She is from the Yarn to Table podcast, but she's doing this awesome year-long knit along where you kind of explore different types of fibers all year long. And so the first one was camelid fibers. I thought that it was running through March, but it only ran through February, so I wasn't able to actually enter it because I missed the deadline, but that was my entry for it, I guess. I was just kind of doing it in spirit because I missed it. But I think the next one she's doing is goat fibers, so that should be fun. But if you're interested in trying out lots of new fibers or new to you fibers, definitely check it out. I think that it's a super awesome idea for a knit along, and I am excited for when she does the silk thing because I have silk in my stash and I've never knit with it, and so I'm just like waiting for the perfect time to cast on a silk thing. Yeah, anyways, okay, so next finished object. I have another sweater to show you guys. It's The Piece of Silver by Veer Valimaki. While I was in Paris, I went to La Aimee, as you do, and I picked up yarn specifically for this sweater. I've been wanting to knit it for a really long time. I had a lot of yarn in my stash that I thought would look awesome in the sweater, but I didn't have any in the right amount. And I also really wanted the sweater to be mostly solid with just a little bit of speckling and not too much like crazy color changes. So while I was shopping for yarn at Love Aimee, I picked up this. And I knit it. I cast it on when I got home. And I finished it last night. I guess I didn't like finish because I still haven't done the ends. And I haven't blocked it yet. But I think that it is so gorgeous. I don't remember, I think it's like a twist. I don't remember the name of the base, but I think it's an 80/20 merino nylon and the colorway is Quail. And I'm pretty happy with it. I alternated skeins throughout and this took less than 2.5. So I weighed the yarn that I have left and I have about 70 grams left and I only had 3 skeins. So it took only a little bit over 2. I did not do a gauge swatch. I just decided to live dangerously for this one because I kind of didn't care if it had negative E's or positive E's. So I just cast it on for the second smallest size. And my gauge ended up being slightly looser. So it does have a bit more positive E's than what the pattern calls for, but I'm okay with it. I think I might have knit the body too short, but I decided to leave it a little bit short because this is a superwash yarn, so I'm expecting it to grow. So after I block it, I'm going to see how it fits, and then I may or may not add to the body of it. But I did, after I finished the body and I did the sleeves, I just knit the sleeves to exactly where I wanted them because I knew for sure I didn't want sleeves that were too short. So I just kind of stopped the body early. I just didn't really know how much yarn I was gonna have. Turns out I have a ton extra, so it's not a big deal, but I really love it. I love how simple it is, and I know it's gonna be super wearable, and I'm planning on wearing this to Edinburgh Yarn Festival. And it's my newest sweater, so I'm excited about it. I think that's about it. I think the only thing I do not like about this is these stripes that came out on the sleeve. I don't know, I feel like the speckles are like really evenly and beautifully distributed throughout the whole thing, and then this sleeve has like 4 stripes on it. The other side like looks fine, but what are you gonna do? I guess I can't complain too much if I didn't get any pooling at all in the rest of the sweater. And there's just that one part on the sleeve, so it's fine. And it's not even pooling, it's just kind of like weird little stripes. So anyway, that's that. It was a really easy pattern to knit, very, very simple. I have been wanting to knit it for a long time, and I was waiting and waiting and waiting for it to become available on Ravelry as a download because it came out in the first issue of Lane magazine, which is like 25 euro, which is quite a bit of money, and that was kind of the only pattern I was interested in at the time, and I didn't want to spend that much for just one pattern. I don't know, I just like was on the fence about buying the magazine itself for a long time. Then I go to Amsterdam and I see the magazine sitting in Stephen and Penelope, and I was like, whatever, I'm on vacation, I'm just gonna buy this thing so I can knit this sweater because I've been wanting to for forever. And then like the next day I get on Ravelry and it was finally available for download. I thought it was never gonna be available for download because all the other patterns from that issue, like almost all of them seemed like they were available for download, but that was like the last one left. So I thought that they were just never gonna release it as an individual download, and then they did like right after I bought the magazine, so whatever. And of course it's like $5, like it's really cheap. It's a cheap sweater pattern, and I was like kind of bummed that I spent all that money. So I might try to knit more out of that magazine just out of principle because I spent so much money on it. Anyway, it doesn't matter because now I have this beautiful sweater and I love it, so that's that. My last finished object is a little bit out of left field. It's something that I started last summer and then it just sat on a shelf for a long time because it was kind of boring to knit. And if you follow me on Instagram, you will have seen it already, but it is this pair of shorts. They're fuzzy and black and enormous, like so huge. And they're way too big for me. Like, this is not how big my butt is at all. I can't believe how big they are. When I knit them and I first got them off the needles, I put them on and they were a little loose, but they fit okay. And I knit these originally as like a ballet warm-up because my hips were really hurting and I wanted to have some like hip warmers, I guess. So I knit this really big 1x1 rib waistband because I wanted them to either come up really high or like fold them over, like roll them down. So I started with that and that was super boring. So I just let them sit for a long time. And these are patternless. I just kind of made these up as I went using other patterns for ideas for construction. So they're top down. And then when I got to the main part of the shorts, I did these on like a sock size needle. Did the waistband on a sock size needle. And then I switched to like a US 7 or 8, I think. I don't remember. For the main part of the shorts, and then I switched to stockinette. And I don't know if it's this yarn, but it's like once they get stretched out, they just kind of stay. Because I wore them to class once, and they look like this. Like, they are huge. I was really hoping to turn this into a pattern. Like, write it down because they're pretty simple. I could easily write down a pattern, but I just have to re-knit them because the sizing is just like ridiculous. These are way too big for me, which is a shame because they're really cute and they're really soft. The yarn I used is Knit Picks Revelry, I think. It's an alpaca and acrylic blend. So maybe not the best choice for shorts, but it's just what I had, and I thought that fuzzy black shorts would be a good choice for ballet. For whatever reason. They are not a good choice for fit. So I think I'm just gonna knit a much, much smaller pair and see how those go. This waistband, I just knit a straight 1x1 rib for a while. And when I put them on at first, like they were just like a little bit loose. They weren't crazy huge on me, but I thought it might be a good idea to have a drawstring. So I don't have any drawstring holes because this was an afterthought thing. So I just got a crochet hook and I like made a crochet chain. I don't even, is that what it's called? I know how to do crochet. I know how to do crochet things, but I don't know what they're called. So I think this is a chain, but I just like chained a bunch of yarn into a really long chain and I put the end through a giant darning needle and I just ran it through underneath. I think you probably can't see it. I just ran it through in between the ribs on the waist. And I also made it so that the bow, the drawstring bow, ends up on the inside so that when I roll them down, it ends up on the outside. But none of that matters because they're unwearable now because I wore them once and they're huge. So anyway, I'll try again. I would really, really like to have a pattern for those to put on Ravelry, but first I have to figure out sizing. Okay, that's it for finished objects. So since I have so many things finished right now, that means I don't have that much to show you guys in the way of whips. But I do have two. I have two works in progress. The first of which is a hat. It is the Rackster Hat by Stephen West. And I am using the pattern from one of his books. You can get it individually downloadable on Ravelry, but I just already had this pattern book and I really like this hat. I've been wanting to make it for a long time, but I never had yarn I wanted to use for it. I've had issues with this hat. Let me just show it to you. So here's what I've got. It's super cute. It has these ear flaps on a really heavily cabled brim. And then the body of the hat has these vertical stripes. Here's the inside. So it's supposed to be reversible. That's the inside. And the cables are fully reversible. Let me tell you the story of this hat. Okay. I'm knitting this with Brooklyn Tweed Shelter. This is my first Brooklyn Tweed project. I love using this yarn. It has been lovely, which is not news to anyone. I'm using the Wood Smoke colorway, and I don't remember the colorway of this white one, but I think it's like natural or something. It's not dyed, it's just a natural creamy white color. Anyway, I was all excited. I bought the yarn specifically for this hat when I was at Stephen West's shop in Amsterdam. So I was really excited to cast it on and make it. And usually a worsted hat does not take me longer than a couple days. But I was knitting out of the book and not out of the pattern that you download on Ravelry. And when you knit out of a book, you don't get an email telling you if there's an issue with the pattern. You don't get errata. I even looked at the project page before I started to see if there were any issues. I usually do. If I'm using a printed or like physical pattern of something, I'll just get online to see if there's errata before I start, which you should do too. Everybody, if you're knitting out of a book, check online first if there's problems, because you'll make your life so much easier. But that was not the case actually this time, because there was a mistake in the book that like nobody caught or said anything about, but there's also like tons and tons and tons of projects for this pattern on Ravelry, and so I couldn't look through every single one, but I tried to like search for the most helpful project pages. But I think mostly everybody was using the PDF that they downloaded on Ravelry, because I knit this whole brim. I knit the ear flap and the brim. And this is a lot of cabling, you guys, like lots of little cables. They were not fun to knit because it was like kind of tight for me, and it was just not fun. I don't mind doing cables, but it was just a lot. Anyway, that's a personal problem. Anyway, so I finished the brim and I was looking at it, and this is also my fault for not like looking at my knitting before I finished the brim, but I realized that the fabric was not reversible. So then I opened the book and I'm looking at the pictures. I'm trying to figure out, is there an actual inside and outside? Is it supposed to be 100% reversible? Then I get online and I look at pictures on Ravelry of other people's projects. I saw like one person's project that looked like mine with the same mistakes. So I knew I wasn't totally crazy. And it turns out in the book, the instructions for the cable abbreviation, it's in the back of the book. So I'm guessing that there's other patterns in the book that use the same abbreviation, like C4B, like cable 4 back or whatever like that. And so that information was in the back of the book, not with the pattern itself. So it turns out that the instructions for the abbreviation said to knit all the stitches, but half of them were supposed to be purled and half were supposed to be knit. But the instructions made it seem like you're supposed to knit all of them. So I had, like, it actually looked like this on one side, and on the other side there were all these like ridges, like purl bumps that weren't supposed to be there because I had been knitting a bunch of stitches where I was supposed to be purling. So that was really, really frustrating. I'm guessing that the pattern PDF has the correct cabling instructions, because actually on the pattern page itself it says these are the cables that you need to be able to do if you're going to knit this pattern, and it says which ones are supposed to be knit and which ones are supposed to be purled, but it doesn't say that that's a correction of a mistake. It just says these are the cables that you're going to be doing. So I never actually read through it. If it had said there's a mistake in the book, do these cables instead, then that would have been one thing, but it never said anything about a mistake. So I just assumed, I just didn't read through it because I didn't think I needed to. And then I saw it later, of course. Okay, so I got angry. I threw it in the corner next to the radiator, including the book. I just threw it all in the corner, and it sat there for like 2 weeks. I didn't even touch it. I didn't go near it. It's a corner that I don't occupy in my house that often. So it had a bit of a timeout. And I needed some travel knitting while I went to Paris, so I decided it was time. I frogged it, and I re-knit the brim on the train to Paris. It was about 2.5 hours, and I think I did most of it on the train ride there, so it was fine. Okay, cut to this morning. I had knit way past here. I had knit several inches. I was about to be where the decreases are. And I was thinking, this looks huge. This hat looks enormous. And then I was looking at the picture in the pattern, and I noticed how the stripes are connected to these round parts. Like these round parts of the cables kind of connect, and then that's where the stripe goes up from. And mine did not look like that. So then I counted the cables I had, and then I counted the stripes I had, and I completely missed a decrease row that you're supposed to do in between the brim and the body of the hat. Gah. Okay, I was looking at this and I was like, I cannot believe that I missed this entire decrease round. But it makes sense because I was traveling and I wasn't knitting from the book anymore. I had just taken a picture of the page on my phone, and so I was just referencing a picture on my phone, and so it's just easy to miss things like that. So the body of the hat was like way too big. It was way too big, so I just decided it's worth frogging. I've like invested so much time in this little hat so far. I can invest a little bit more time. And this part actually goes pretty quick because I started this morning and I only knit for a little bit, and I already have a good amount knit. But yeah, another problem with that is that when I was looking at the abbreviation, it's like a cable and decrease that happens at the same time, so you're decreasing while you're cabling. And I flipped to the back of the book, and the information for that abbreviation, the cable for back decrease or whatever, that was not even in the book at all. So that's when I got on the Ravelry page to see if it was there, and that's when I saw the paragraph about the cable information, and it did have the instructions there. But like I said, it didn't say here's a correction to a mistake, it just said here's the cables you have to do. So that's why I never noticed it before. So that was pretty frustrating. I have always had an awesome experience knitting West Knits patterns. This is the first time I have been slightly let down. I think all the other West Knits patterns I've knit from have been PDF downloads, and I've never had an issue with those. So that's just some info. If you happen to be knitting this hat out of that book, just check the cable info on the pattern page before you knit it. I'm hoping that this will actually fit me now. I think that the brim is actually a good size, and it's super cute. So I really want to finish this so that I can wear it to Edinburgh Yarn Festival, which is coming up really, really soon. speaking of that, I have no idea what I'm going to be knitting, because I think once I finish this hat, I'm not gonna have much else in the way of like small knitting projects to take with me, so I don't really know what to bring to that. Anyway, thanks for listening to my like sob story about this hat. I will stop talking about it. Hopefully it will be done next time. I do want to show you guys the project bag I'm using for it because it's so amazing. It's made by Lorelei, and she has a podcast too, which I will link below. But she has an Etsy shop, and so she made this little bag with the clear vinyl on the outside so you can see inside, and then the inside has this adorable like woodland creature fabric, which I love because A, it's super cute, and B, it has hedgehogs in it. They're so cute. I didn't know there was hedgehogs in it when I ordered it, but I was really, really excited when I got it and saw the hedgehogs because I used to have a pet hedgehog, and she was the cutest and the sweetest, and I miss her. She died of old age, so it's not, you know, nothing crazy happened to her. She had a long life for a hedgehog, so. Anyway, yeah, thank you, Lorelei, for the bag. I was really excited when I got it in the mail, and it actually fits perfectly the hat and a couple balls of yarn and this hank. So yeah, I love it. Okay, one more work in progress. And this is not something that I'm like super, super excited about, but I just kind of like cast it on a whim, which seems to be a thing for me these days. Just like, oh, I've got this yarn, I've got this pattern, I'll just make this thing without very much thought put into it. No swatch, just started knitting because I kind of don't care how it turns out, but I'm knitting the Verona top, which is a cropped lace weight mohair sweater. Also from the KnitScene magazine. I think it's from fall 2017, but there's one issue that they have that has a bunch of like 90s inspired patterns in it. So this is one of them. It honestly doesn't look like anything right now. It's just like a big orange blob. But I've had this orange silk mohair in my stash for a long time. It's from Lion Brand, their LB collection, which I guess is their, like they have a few yarns that are like a higher quality. And it's really nice. I really like it. I'm also knitting this as like a warm-up for ballet. So I kind of didn't care about the sizing. But you knit the body in a tube, and then you separate to knit the front panel, which I've done. And then, so I have all the back stitches on a holder because I needed to use the needles for something else. So I just have to pick those up, pick those back up and knit the back panel and then do the sleeves. So I think this is on size US 8 needles. So it's like a really gauzy, fuzzy fabric. So it went really, really fast. I don't know, just one of those random projects that you start and there it is. Here's the yarn. I may or may not do the sleeves in a different color just for fun, but we'll see. I don't know. I don't really have much to say about it. It's just like a thing that I have that I'm knitting. It could easily end up being frogged because I just am not motivated to finish it because I'm not particularly excited about it. But I thought I'd show it to you guys. I don't know. Okay. That's it for knitting. I have some fluff stuff to talk about, which is like knitting related things, but not any projects. And the first of which is a little bit about my trip to Paris. It was so fun. It was over President's Day weekend. And so a lot of my friends were not around because they were traveling for the holiday, and Ben had to work through the weekend. So like he was gone out of town for work through the weekend, and I was like, I don't just want to sit around on a long weekend at home by myself. So I just kind of booked a last minute trip to Paris for myself for fun. yeah, it was a little impulsive, but I'm glad I did it. It was nice. It's nice to travel alone sometimes. But yeah, since it was over the weekend and through Monday, the first thing I had to do was go to Aimee because they were closing like an hour after I got to Paris, and they weren't going to be open for the whole rest of the time I was going to be there. So I was like, if I want to go, I have to go very first thing. So I dropped my bags off at the Airbnb I was staying at, and my train was super late, so I was like really afraid I wasn't going to make it. So I dropped my bags off. I went straight to the shop. I knew I wanted to get yarn for my piece of silver, so that was kind of first thing on the agenda. And there I got to meet Julia and Emily and Charlotte and Leah. And so they are all lovely and amazing. And we went to go get a drink after we shopped, and then we went to a birthday dinner for another knitting friend that they have. And so there was two knitters were having birthdays. It was Claire and Charlotte. And I felt bad that I was crashing their birthday dinner, but they were so lovely and welcoming, and it was just a lot of fun. But yeah, thank you so much to Julia for being willing to let me tag along with you guys. It was so fun, and it was definitely a highlight of my trip. So that was kind of all I had time for that day, because I didn't get in until like late afternoon, evening. The next day I went to see a Sheila Hicks exhibit, and it was incredible. And if you guys don't know about Sheila Hicks, she is this fiber artist who does these like giant installations with yarn and wool and fiber and weavings and like all this. Oh my god, it's amazing. So just Google her if you haven't heard of her before. But I'll put a couple pictures that I took here. But I have known about her for a while. I watched a little documentary about her, and I've always wanted to see some of her work. Last time I was in Paris, she had an exhibit, but I missed it by like one day, so I didn't even get to see it. So that was an awesome morning for me. I just went and I had breakfast, and then I went to the exhibit, and after I looked around for a while, I just sat and knit in there, and it was incredible. Yeah, so after I went to the museum, I had signed up for an embroidery class through Airbnb. So if you guys don't know, Airbnb also has experiences and not just places to stay. Like they do tours and stuff like that. But there was one experience that was to learn to embroider and also to go check out some haberdashery shops and stuff as part of the thing. But I signed up for a Sunday time slot, so everything was closed, so it was just the embroidery lesson. And embroidery is not difficult. I could have easily learned all of this stuff on YouTube, but it was so much more fun to have somebody physically show you, and I don't know, it just makes it more interesting. And I got to meet a new person and make a new friend, and I was the only one that signed up, so it was like a private lesson type of thing. And it was just like hanging out with a friend, and I will link to that experience below. So if any of you guys want to do something like that, if you're in Paris. So while I was trying to decide what I wanted to embroider, I was thinking that I really wanted to do something kind of inspired by Sheila Hicks and the exhibit that I just saw, because it was just so beautiful and amazing, and it was on the same day, and so I just kind of wanted to embroider something to just kind of remember it by. I pulled out my Fringe Supply field bag, and I will show a picture of the inspiration. So this was my favorite work in the entire exhibit. So I was just thinking about those colors and the lines and everything, and so I just embroidered this like minimalist version of that onto my bag. It doesn't really look like anything, but I'm new to embroidery, so that's what I've got. And I think that it's simple and cute and looks awesome on my yellow bag. And I also bought this bag the first time I went to Aimee in Paris, so I just thought that it was like the perfect thing to put on it. So it's just Paris memories. But yeah, now I'm all excited about embroidery. It's really fun, and it's really not difficult to do. So I kind of went crazy and I bought a bunch of embroidery hoops and this pack of like 200 embroidery floss colors for super cheap on Amazon. Like if you search for embroidery supplies on Amazon, you'll find a ton of it and it's all really cheap. So I'm excited to start doing stuff. But yeah, so the rest of my Paris trip was another dinner with friends. My ballet teacher was actually in Paris at the same time, and so we decided to meet up for dinner with her boyfriend. And the next day I had brunch by myself and I just sat and knit for a while and enjoyed the amazing food and a little bit of sightseeing on my own. And I went to Le Petit Pois Parisiens. So I have shown the Le Petit Pois yarn on my podcast before. I went to the shop last time I was in Paris, and the owner, Anne, dyes amazing, beautiful yarn. And so this was one of my last stops in Paris, and I spent a lot of time there. I had a really rough time picking out some yarn because I just wanted all of it, but I also went in there with no plan, which is like a huge mistake for me because I'll just sit there and stare until I make a decision, and it just took me forever. So anyway, I finally like chose a bunch of skeins, and Anne was so kind, and as I was checking out, she gifted me this amazing skein. This is her basic fingering. It's 100% merino, and the colorway is Candy Crush. Thank you so much, Anne. I was so surprised. Like, she said she wanted to give me a gift, and I was like, me? Like, you want to give me a gift? Like, I couldn't believe it. That was so sweet, and I love this yarn so much, and I can't wait to use it. I bought several other skeins, but I'm going to save the yarn show-off party for a wool booty video, which I will be filming soon, and I'm saying that I'm doing it, so I have to do it. I really have to do it. I've been putting off wool booty for a long time. But yeah, so she does not sell her yarn online, but you can get it at Do You Knit, which is like a really famous yarn shop. If you want to order some of her yarn, you can do so by emailing her, which is how I bought some yarn for a swap I did with Tristan from the Girls in the Yarn Cafe. I wanted to send her some of this yarn, so I just emailed Anne, and she sent me some pictures of what she had, and I just picked out a couple and she sent it to me. So it was nice and easy, and I really enjoyed the more personal interaction. So definitely check her out. She posts a lot of her yarn on Instagram as well if you want to get an idea of what colors and things she has. So thanks again, Anne. I love your shop, and I will be back every time I'm in Paris. Like I mentioned, I did a swap with Tristan from the Girls in the Yarn Cafe. She was so sweet. She spoiled me like crazy. I was like, well, what kind of swap do you want to do? She's like, oh, let's just do like 2 skeins and some goodies. And then she sends me like a box full of yarn. It was crazy. Very, very generous. Thank you, Tristan. But I feel bad because I sent her 2 skeins. So anyway, I'm just going to show one right now, and then I'm going to show the rest of it on the wool booty that I promise I will be filming, because it's quite a bit, and this episode is running really long. So this one I'm particularly excited about. It's her own hand-dyed yarn, and this is her Dragon Scales base, which is a 75-25 merino nylon. The colorway is Stay Sexy, Don't Get Murdered. And I was super pumped when I saw this because before I knew that she sent this, I had sent her a message on Instagram saying that I was listening to My Favorite Murder podcast, which she's mentioned on her podcast several times. And I finally started checking it out, and I love it. It's hilarious. It's like creepy. If you like true crime, but you're kind of a weenie about it, it's a good podcast to listen to, because these women, they're comedians, and they're telling each other these like true murder stories, and they're not laughing about the murder. They're more just like using humor as a way to cope with like horrific, awful things that happen to people all the time. So I don't know. It's not for everybody, but I really, really love this podcast. I love true crime stuff. Anyway, so I open the box and I see this colorway, which is like inspired from that podcast, and I was super excited. So thank you so much, Tristan. I think I might make some socks out of this. It's like a sock kit, I guess. Usually I don't actually use those for socks because I don't knit a whole lot of socks, but I think I might actually do that with this. Yay. Thanks, Tristan. Like I said, I'm gonna be sharing all of the yarn that I bought at the Petit Pois Parisiens and the yarn from the swap in the next Wool Booty video. And if you're new, because I know there's a lot of new people right now, Wool Booty is supposed to be videos that I do that just talk about things I've been buying. Because if I put it in the normal episodes, it's just gonna be too long. So all my shopping and like yarn stuff, stash acquisitions and things like that are gonna go into Wool Booty. I think I've only done 2 so far, and it's not the kind of thing that I always like to watch myself, so I don't feel particularly motivated to make those videos, but I've been getting a lot of requests for them. I think people really like to see what other people are shopping for, so I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it for you guys. Yeah, other than that, if you are gonna be at Edinburgh Yarn Festival, please come say hi. Please, please, please. I am really excited to go. I have no plan. I cannot think past this Cinderella performance that I have coming up, the ballet that I'm doing. It's really stressful, and I'm going to Edinburgh Yarn Festival like a day after the show, and so I don't know. Like, this show is like a big thing in my mind, and so I can't really think past it. But I'm going to Edinburgh and I'm going to Iceland like right after the show. So like I haven't planned for these trips at all. I have my flights and my hotel book, but that's about it. Yeah, so no plan. I think I'm gonna try to buy a sweater quantity or 2. My 30th birthday is going to be right in between my Edinburgh trip and my Iceland trip, like sandwiched in between there. So I'm definitely gonna be treating myself, which might mean that there is gonna be an epic Wool Booty video to show afterwards. I certainly hope there will be. We'll see. I'm not gonna be planning on the most sensible yarn shopping experience. But sometimes I say I'm gonna splurge and go crazy, and then I'm just like not interested in anything in the moment. So who knows what's gonna happen? I don't know. Hopefully I get at least 1 sweater's quantity out of it. I guess the last thing I want to talk about is my current test knit that's going on. I designed and knit some leg warmers last year, and I wrote up a pattern, and it's currently being tested right now. Thank you so much to my amazing test knitters. It's a fairly simple pattern, but I don't know, like I thought I could maybe get away without testing, and I'm so glad that I did not do that because there's like already issues. There's a lot that goes into pattern writing that you don't think about, or that you don't even notice until you have to do it. And so I'm really, really grateful to my test knitters, and hopefully I will get that pattern up this spring. I think testing's gonna be done at the end of March. I think I'm gonna try to have it published like right when I get back from Iceland. So I don't know, that should be fun, new experience. And then after the leg warmers get published on Ravelry, I will probably think more about those little shorts that I knit. Yeah, I think then I'll have time to mess more with the sizing and maybe try it in a different yarn that would be better suited to some shorts. I think that's about it. So before I sign off here, I just really want to thank you guys for putting up with my sporadic filming schedule. I start to feel guilty if it's gone too long without filming an episode. And I just have to keep telling myself that I'm doing this for fun. And nobody's making me feel guilty. I just start to feel that way, and then if I ever express that like I feel bad that I haven't been filming, everybody's so nice and they're like, no, take your time. So yes, I really appreciate you guys and your patience, but I'm hoping that after this show is over, I won't be so stressed out all the time, and if I get the Patreon going, then hopefully I'll be able to actually set aside a real time for podcasting, and set aside some time to make some really helpful sweater knitting videos that have been requested and that I think people really want to see. I also had requests from people who really wanted to see videos of me dancing, which I'm slightly embarrassed to show, but I don't think that I am gonna show anything from Nutcracker, and that is mostly because the show was full of young children, and I don't really feel comfortable posting videos of other people's kids on YouTube. I don't think I'm gonna show any of that, but if I'm able to get a video of the Cinderella show that's coming up, I'll try to get that out there for you guys. I don't film myself dancing a whole lot because I'm just like not thinking about it. But I do have an Instagram for my like amateur ballet pursuits. It's Ballet Kate. I'm just sharing it because you guys specifically asked to see my dancing stuff, so occasionally I'll make a post on there. And I've also had requests for more of things from my personal life. I think the main reason that I haven't shared so much is not because I'm a super private person, it's just because now that I am going longer between episodes, I have so much knitting to share and so much knitting to talk about, and I think when I watch a podcast, I'm mostly interested in the actual knitting content, and so that's what I tend to talk the most about when I do my own podcast. And then I know that I take forever editing, and so once I kind of get to a certain point while I'm filming, I just kind of want to wrap it up and finish. Like right now, I feel like I'm just rambling, and I'm gonna be really mad at myself for talking so much at the end because I just want to finish editing and get it uploaded. I appreciate that people are interested in what I'm doing in my personal life, so if I manage to have more regular uploads, then I will possibly have more time to talk more about my personal stuff and my dancing stuff and all that other non-knitting stuff I'm interested in. So anyway, that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening to my ramblings, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!